Hey, it's me, Bobbert, and this is my retrospective review of the Conduit for the Nintendo Wii. I remember this game getting so much hype way back then, and it was one of my favorites on the Nintendo Wii back then, but did this game age pretty well? Let's find out. Before making the Conduit, the developers, High Voltage Software, were known for making games that were mostly TV licenses. Some of their notable games are Paperboy for the Nintendo 64, Lego Racers, Hunter the Reckoning, and the port of 50 Cent's Bulletproof for the PSP. They were founded in 1993, and in 2008, which would be their 15-year anniversary, High Voltage Software wanted to make a bigger name for themselves in the gaming industry, and they hope to do that with the Conduit for the Wii. So why Wii exclusive? The Wii was a fast-selling console at the time, and hardcore games like first-person shooters wasn't as common on the console. Well, let me rephrase that. First-person shooter that wasn't on rails like House of the Dead wasn't as common, and they saw potential despite the fact that third-party games in general was not selling on that console. One big way High Voltage Software stand out is the new Quantum 3 engine. This engine helps makes the game look more visually appealing, closer to 360 and PS3 graphics. I remember the hype back then. Game journalists were impressed, fans were excited, even Nintendo's own Racy Fils-Aimé called it the Halo Killer, which was overhyping it, and it did no such thing. Back then, I only had a Wii, and I didn't have a 360 or PS3 at the time until like a year later, so I was really invested in this game and hoping to itch that hardcore game feeling. Don't get me wrong, Nintendo put out some great games on the consoles, and there's some few third-party games I would recommend, but the Conduit seems like it was a hardcore game that people wanted at the time. The story actually starts near the end of the adventure, but I'm going to tell it in order. It actually starts with our main character Michael Ford on a mission to take down the enemy while being guided by John Adams. Now, before I continue, I just want to mention that the voice actors of Ford and Adams were performed by father and son team, William Morgan Shepard and Mark Shepard, and I thought that was pretty cool, and I wanted to share that information to everybody listening. So at the end of the mission, John Adams betrayed Ford and left him for dead. Happy Father's Day, I guess. Just kidding. But now Michael Ford is being guided by Prometheus, who he thought was the enemy, and must take down the Trust and the Dredge to save America. The gameplay of the Conduit uses the pointer and motion control of the Wii remote. Uses point and shoot, and it works very well. The only problem I had with the pointer is looking at the bottom corners of the screen when you try to aim for enemies. But that's more of a level design problem. And to be fair, the game probably wanted me to go down there instead of just trying to snipe enemies, but they gave me the weapon to do so of course I'm taking the sniping option. Now you shake the Wii remote to do a immediate attack, which is one of the most satisfying things ever when one of those enemies coming right at you and it's just, wow, make a stabbing motion and it knocks them out with one hit. Pretty awesome. Pretty much rank up there with Travis Touchdown decapitation motion, pretty much. You also shake the nunchuck to draw a grenade, which actually works also very well. I'm surprised by that. I already had a grenade misfire on me. It happened like maybe once or twice, but that was more of my fault. But grenade throwing is pretty accurate most of the time. But the control layout does take some getting used to, I'll admit. Your trigger button's in the back. The B button makes sense. You jump is the A button, which, now that I think about it, it's kind of weird having a jump button in a first-person shooter, but whatever. You use the ASE, a device that I'm going to talk about a little bit more later on. You use that with the press button. And here's where things get a little bit more complicated. You press the D-pad down to zoom in, like when you're using a sniper rifle. The left D-pad to change your weapons. And all the way at the bottom is the 2 button, and you use that to pause the game. And just explaining that controller layout gives me a headache, I'm not gonna lie. I blame the remote itself more than the developers or the game, because Nintendo Wii made it hard for game developers to make a game that's very complex, and it's pretty much forcing them to simplify everything, even though this type of game needs, a better controller layout. But at the same time, I blame High Voltage Software for not adding classic controller support, which will fix most of the problem. Weapons in this game are separated in 3 categories. Human weapons, which is real-life weapons like handgun and shotguns. The trash weapons, which are secret agent sci-fi weapons from the enemies. They pretty much use electricity, and that's pretty much how you know it's their weapon. And from the dredge, you use alien-like weapons, which is self-explanatory. You can tell by the way they look. And one of my favorite weapons is from the dredge, and that's the strike rifle. It's pretty powerful. It's long distance, so you can snipe enemies from far away, and it can be stronger when you charge it up. You can do that with all the dredge weapons, but it takes out a lot more ammo, and it's easier just to fire them one by one and taking a lot of enemies out that way. At least that's my strategy. But I use the other weapons as well, quite a lot actually. In every chapter, I never find myself using just one weapon throughout the adventure. They did a good job making you use every weapon they have and experimenting how fun you can use each one of them. Like this grenade rocket launcher can take out enemies pretty fast. And of course there's the standard shotgun. You can never go wrong with that. But I've never been disappointed by a weapon. The ASE, which stands for All-Seeing Eye, is a device that the Trust wants and Ford is trying to protect, so story-wise it's very important. Now gameplay-wise, it's mostly optional, where you find hidden objects like messages, collectibles, which can be used to unlock cheats and codes, and these puzzles to solve where you can get rare and powerful weapons. They're pretty powerful, but you can't find ammo for it, even if you find a refueling station. The only mandatory things you do with the ASE is to find bombs and unlocking doors, which feels like it's more like padding out the game rather than giving it variety. Back when I first played this game, I thought the graphics were amazing compared to most Wii games. Then I got an Xbox 360 and the Conduit didn't look that impressive anymore. I was kind of one of those person who tried to defend the Wii as hard as I could, even though I didn't really hate the other consoles. I wanted to believe that the Wii could do so much better than what they're offering, and I did at the time. Then I think I didn't come to that realization until I saw my brother playing the PlayStation 3. He was playing Uncharted. I was looking at all the graphics, especially the water, and I knew to myself the Wii could never get to that level. Now, playing this game again, I think the graphics looks great in some areas, like enemies, objects, and weapons. It looks so nice and shiny and detailed, but it's the background that makes everything look like a Wii game. It looks very low polygon, excuse me. And, well, I understand there's system limitations, but the backgrounds does stick out like a sore thumb. But I am very impressed with the developer did with the game, and they were able to make the game look great despite the limitations. I was surprised on the variety of aliens they have. You have your standard ground enemies, enemies that explode when you defeat them, fire enemies, and the huge one as well. There's also human with some variety, but the aliens are definitely the one they want to show off the most. The humans just have different weapons and appearance, and that's about it. They don't really go anything beyond that. The aliens, they really wanted to make this sci-fi game more about the aliens. You're probably wondering at this point why it's called a conduit. Well, the Dredge and the Twist are working together to take over Washington, D.C. and the world, and the aliens are getting through here with conduits, which is a portal where the enemies come from. Most of the times you're destroying them, but there are rare occasions where you go through them, but only in cutscenes, which I find it very disappointing. I think you could have used them to solve puzzles, get through other locations if you want to backtrack, even though this backtracking is not really a thing in this game. But I still think you could have been more creative than just where enemies spawn. The gameplay likes a mix of Call of Duty and GoldenEye for the Nintendo 64. You go to a linear line, following the dot to your next objective while killing enemies. Sometimes you get small little missions like destroy a number of devices or things to progress. Difficulty seems to be pretty steady for the most part in each chapter. Not too easy but not too hard as well. But it does get ridiculous near the end of the game. These conduits can respawn enemies pretty quick, and they can make completing objectives much harder than normal, especially at the end where it's pretty much an enemy gauntlet. But despite all this, I still was enjoying myself with this game, even though I kind of rage quit and turned off the games a couple of times near the end. But I still like to play this game and go back to it. Hopefully I go back to it in the near future. About the rest of the story, Michael Ford, while having his doubt about his new partner Prometheus, continued his mission while following Prometheus' direction. The story was straightforward for the most part in each chapter until chapter 8, where Michael Ford finds out that Prometheus is an alien. He's not part of the Dredge or the enemy, but the Trust used him to create these creatures. And in the final chapter, it ends on a cliffhanger with Michael Ford going into the conduit and not knowing what's on the other side. And the antagonist, John Adams, may or may not be the same John Adams who was the second president of the United States. I guess that's a review for next time. The Conduit is a great game in my opinion. It may have aged in some areas like graphics and camera/pointer control, but playing this game reminded me of old school FPS and some modern FPS combined. It really was a great time. It gave me some nostalgia feeling, even though playing this game back in 2008, it was pretty brand new, but it reminded me of some of the old games I used to play. I played this game a lot online against other players. Too bad I couldn't show that off because Nintendo Online is shut off for the Wii. And it was a decent substitute for those who didn't have a 360 or PS3. So I really do recommend getting the Conduit, give it a try, especially if you can find it for cheap. The game sold about 350,000 units, well, 120,000 units in its initial release, which was successful enough to make a sequel. Not many people talk about this game, or at least not online, but I hope for those who are watching this video, I hope this encourages you to at least give this game a try. Again, I won't call this like an underrated gem, but it's definitely a game that you should try out and give it a try. It's a pretty fun game. Hope this game gets a remake on the Nintendo Switch, but there's only the HD port on cell phones, which I'm not sure you're able to download that anymore. But I do think there is potential in the series, and hopefully High Voltage Software, if they still own the rights to this game, maybe have a Kickstarter to help fund a sequel. But again, that's wishful thinking on my part. Thank you for watching my video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you played the Conduit, tell me what you think. And hopefully I can have the next video, which is the Conduit 2, uploaded before the 4th of July, since this game is a bit America. I mean, it's not like super patriotic, but it does got that America vibe. So hopefully I can get that game uploaded in time. I also got like a couple of reviews, in mind. If things go pretty well, despite this pandemic we're going through, I can have that uploaded before the end of June as well. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I catch you guys later.